thanks everybody for joining in today. We're so to have you and excited to host you on today's webinar. For today's webinar, a lot of you have already figured it out, but thought we would recommend just some ways that you can interact with us throughout the presentation. So on the right-hand side, you should see a reaction and chat box. So throughout the presentation, feel free to insert any of your questions that you have and react. You're able to put little emojis to certain things, so you can clap and give up different things like that. Go ahead and put your questions in there, and we will do our best to mark your question as a question. And then at the very end, again, we'll do our best to answer all the questions. You know, any that come in, myself and Rick will go ahead and do that for you. So easy way to do that. But okay, perfect. Well, again, thanks so much for joining in. Today's webinar presentation is large-scale model printing with the Formlabs Form 3L. My name is Jason. I am the marketing manager here at Source Graphics, and I am really excited to be talking with Rick Baker, who will be joining us in just a bit. But first, a little bit of some housekeeping, tell you a little bit about what we're going to be covering today and what you can expect. Total runtime that we're expecting for today is going to be probably about 45 minutes to an hour for the presentation. If you're able to stay the whole time, fantastic. If not, don't worry, you'll definitely get a recording of the webinar afterwards. So if there's anything that you want to make sure to see, you'll be able to see it, definitely. But we'll go over just a brief introduction of Source Graphics. Some of you may have worked with us already, and some of you may not have. So we'll go into letting you know a little bit about us. And then after that, we're going to just jump right into it. I'll bring Rick up, and we will be talking about the 3L and 3D printing. And then, of course, we'll touch on the 3D printing and movie making, specifically where Rick thinks 3D printing really has a good fit in movie making. And at the very end, we will answer some of your questions. Perfect. So a little bit about Source Graphics. So Source Graphics, we're a leading Formlabs reseller and a 3D solutions provider based here in Anaheim. So we've been partners with Formlabs for a number of years and have stocked their printers, resins, and all the essentials that you need to do your SLA printing with Formlabs. Some of the benefits of kind of working through us, we do have the same dating for all materials and anything like that. Dedicated customer support, can always come out to us and speak with somebody. And if you're ever interested in coming in and seeing the 3L that is behind me, or even doing a virtual demonstration similar to how we're doing it right now, we can always set that up, as we do have a local showroom that you can come in and take a look at. So if you ever want to schedule an online or in-person consultation, you can definitely do so in our by visiting our website, or by emailing us info@Source Graphics, and we can connect with you on that. So when we think about Source Graphics and really kind of what we're trying to do in our sphere, it really boils down to a simple statement. And that is, we really believe in empowering today's creators and problem solvers with the best solutions to change our world. So that's why today I'm really excited to be talking with one of the great creators, I would say, in American movie making. You know him from his work on such movies as An American Werewolf in London, Planet of the Apes, Coming to America, and the list goes on. He's won 7 Academy Awards for his work in film, and that's why I am excited to welcome Rick Baker. Rick, come up on stage.
Is it working?
Is
it working?
We got
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Rick, how are you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Got a little sniffly nose today, though.
The allergies. The allergies this time of year, right? It's awful.
Yeah, no, and I'm allergic to everything, so it doesn't.
Right, exactly. I'm sure everything behind you too. All the creatures, they contribute.
Yeah, I think so. Well, also I'm dog sitting my daughter's dog, and I think that's helping the nose situation could be bad too.
Right.
So.
Well, on behalf of everybody, I've already said this, but thank you again for taking the time to talk with us today. I'm super excited to speak with you about 3D printing, about the 3L that you're working with. It's been really exciting to obviously be a follower of your Instagram and see some of the work that you've been doing, both in 3D printing and with the 3L.
Yeah, I'm really having a lot of fun. It's like, I like getting new toys and playing with them, seeing what they can do and how I can use them. So I was happy to have the opportunity to play with this
Awesome.
3L.
Well, I know we're kind of short on time, and obviously want to be respectful of your time and everybody else's. So let's just jump right into it. Before we touch on the 3L
Okay.
and specifically, I think everybody would be probably curious, as I was, really. Yeah, thought we could set the scene. So tell us a little bit. How did you get into 3D printing specific? How did that? Because I mean, you're known for your special makeup effects and doing a lot of the analog and being hands-on. So how did you get into 3D printing?
Well, like I said, I like new toys and like playing with things and learning new things. And I learned a lot from what happened to Jack Pierce, who was the makeup artist at Universal that created the Frankenstein's monster and the Mummy and the Wolfman and all the classic monsters. And he didn't stay current with the times. He was doing out of the kit makeups when other studios were using foam latex. And in the 40s, they booted him out of Universal after all he did for that studio. And I mean, I as a young kid, I put that in my brain and said, I'm not going to let that happen to me. So I wanted to stay current with everything that's happening. So I mean, when I was, I think, the first makeup artist to start using Photoshop. I was the first one to start using ZBrush. And the 3D printing I was always curious about. And I went to a Big Brothers charity event. And in part of the auction was a 3D printer. And I thought, well, I'll bid on that. And I ended up getting it. It was a filament printer, a little one, not too big, and started playing with it. And at first I was going to throw it out my window because it wasn't working right. But I got it sorted out and printed some of my ZBrush stuff. I printed a little Popeye bust that I did when I was beta testing the first version of ZBrush that had subtools, and I just kind of got hooked. I thought, wow, this is really exciting. So I ended up having that Popeye print in a 3D print show here in Burbank, and main reason I went to the show was to find out what was out there and what was better than what I had, and everybody at that show, and this was years ago, was saying, oh, you need the Formlabs printer. And at that time it was a little one, and it only printed something about that big. And I liked how it looked, but I thought I'll wait for it to grow, And so I was excited when I heard the announcement about the Form 3L, that's something that you could do something human size. But that's how my introduction to printing started.
Yeah, and I'm curious, what that was, like for you, because I mean, not only sounds like you were learning ZBrush at the time as well, but you also learn the software too for some of these printers. The slicing software for those that know what it is that actually prepares the print to go. So, what was that process like in learning that as well? And how did, I guess, kind of following up on that, how did it differ? What were some of the things that felt different from the way you used to work with doing some of this stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was pretty proficient at ZBrush by the time I got into the printing thing, and I found out that every printer has different slicing software basically, and it's a different setup. The filament printers, print differently than resin printers, and all of them take a little adjusting and getting used to. And I usually will do a test print or two, a smaller version just to see what happens, where the supports should be added if I don't have enough, or I can take some away, And it was the same thing with the Form 3L with their slicing software. It took, I did a couple little busts first and put them in and see how to position them and what was going to happen, and then went bigger with it, So they're all pretty straightforward and pretty easy to use, and they all have their own way of working. And to me, it's amazing how it can divide this thing up into all those slices, And I keep thinking I'd like to be able to get that information, like, and be able to print out, like on paper or something, each slice, and then to glue together a bunch of paper and make a bust that way.
Exactly. It'd be like paper mache almost, right? In a sense, you just have.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, I like playing with stuff, and I'm not a good reader. I'm a little bit dyslexic and have trouble with math and that affects the stuff like this. I mean, first of all, I went to public school in the 50s. We don't know meters and millimeters. It's inches. And most of the 3D software is millimeters. So I go, okay, I'm going to make it. Well, 100 millimeters sounds big. So a lot of times I'll just do something and then I get it and go, oh, that's not too big or that's too small or I need to make the thing thicker than that. And measuring and reading don't work for me, but I play. For me, it's like, what does this do? What's this button? And what does that do? And that's how I learn.
And it's so funny that you say that too, because it won the millimeters thing for me as well. Like I always thought inches and everything like that. And then once I got into 3D printing, you really get used to in millimeters and just the metric system in general, which is really funny. It's a nice little perk of, I guess, picking up 3D printing, but similar to what you said, that's the way that we found too, learning 3D printing and additive and everything like that. The best way to learn is just by doing it. You figure what works and what doesn't, and that's huge.
Well, I mean, I find I see a lot of people, saying, well, I want to do makeup effects or I want to get into masks or I want to do this stuff, but they don't start, they have a lot of excuses, and that's the mistake I think a lot of people make. You just go in there, don't be afraid to fail, but do it, just do it, get out there and start it. And once you start, I mean, a lot of people are saying, I may not be good enough or, it's like, just do it and have fun with it, and so you make a mistake, you screw up, you learn from it. I mean, that's how I learned how to make masks, how I learned how to do makeup was trial and error, I always feel fortunate that I'm a creative person because it keeps me entertained. I mean, people say on my Instagram, you're the busiest retired person I've ever met, and it's like, well, I didn't retire from being a creative person. That's who I am. That's how I have fun. I did this as a hobby as a kid and it was really fun. And it became a job and it became a little less fun, because it was a job. And I had other people telling me what to do, and when I retired, it was now I can go back to how I was when I was a kid and play and have fun with this. And I've been retired now for almost 8 years, I guess. And it's been, some of the best years of my life. I get up every day excited to work on something. And that's what's fun about the printer too. I can work on numerous things at the same time. I can be doing a sculpture and have the printer printing something and, wake up in the morning and to see what, it's exciting, to see what the printer's done overnight.
That's really good. I think it expands your ability for creativity, right? You're not just limited to what you can physically do in the 8 hour, the however long you're awake in a day. That printer can keep going overnight and keep on making for you. So I think that's a really good point. And I think it's a good place to transition also to talking specifically about using, the 3L. So, from a high level perspective, I'm just curious, tell us some of your first impressions. I think you got the printer back in February and have been using it since. So what were some of the initial impressions?
Okay. Well, first of all, I mean, it's a big machine. You can see it behind you there. It's a big, well-made machine that I really appreciated the engineering involved in it. And it's kind of like when you're a pilot in an airplane. It's got a little checklist of things. Did you open the little lid on the cassettes with the thing in there? Did you flip the little thing down that holds the build plate? And it tells you what's going on when you do it. I like the size of it. I like the way it's built. I like the way it's all put together. It's the resins are really cool. The thing that I was going to buy it as soon as it came out, and I heard from somebody that I know that bought one that said, there's a seam in the middle. And I go, what? And he goes, there's a seam. And I go, what the hell? So I stopped on that. And it is unfortunate that seam's there. I guess it's part of the technology of how this printer works with the lasers. But there's a seam that runs down the middle of the build plate, which actually isn't that big of a deal. I mean, we're used to casting things out of molds and having seams and having to clean them up. I mean, that's part of the life of a person who makes masks or makes appliances or does makeup. You usually don't have things in one piece mold, so there's a seam, you have to deal with that. We don't like dealing with it on rubber. I didn't like dealing with it on this, but it's actually much easier to clean up a resin print than it is a rubber mask.
Right, I'm sure, yeah.
Because you can sand and grind and stuff. Yeah. And I also found, how you place the thing in the printer, where the seam line is, seems to really affect how it works. So, it's, again, some trial and error with it and playing around. And I do hope that they can perfect the technology to where they don't have a seam. That'd be great. One of the things I was hoping to do with it was actually print molds that I can run silicone out of. And the seam seemed like it was going to be a bit of a problem in cleaning up a seam in a negative space, like, like a bowl of, mold. It seemed like it would be a difficult thing like that. But it's, like I said, I'm having a blast trying all the different stuff.
Yeah, that's, and I think that's a really good point. It's something to be really aware of, which kind of takes me to the software, I guess, in particular, because with PreForm, which is the slicing software for it, it actually does a pretty good job. And we're going to throw up a quick video what that actually looks like. So this is what PreForm looks like. This is the latest one, but you have all of the materials from Formlabs, and that's what the build volume looks like. But if we look at the next video that we have of it, that's the seam line that Rick is talking about. So you see that's a giant werewolf head or bust that we are running in PreForm, and you can see that little dotted line. So in the software, it can tell you. So when you were doing some prints, kind of orient your parts to take that seam line into account, or how did you work around it, or how did you use it in the software?
Yeah, well, in the beginning, the first thing I printed, I think I put something on the side where it wasn't, the seam wouldn't affect it. I printed this little monkey head, which is one of our shop monkeys in Cinovation Studios. And if I remember correctly, well, maybe I did put I can't tell. I guess I cleaned up the seam so well.
You did a really good job.
Yeah. No, I think I did end up putting the seam. I know for a fact this guy, this American Werewolf Nazi Demon guy, I put the seam right down the middle. For one, I could lay him flat on the printer like this and wanted to see how it printed. And it seemed like a good place because of the design of it as well. There's that divot in here, and it just seemed like it worked really well. And it was basically non-existent, the seams hardly showed up on this at all. And I take the supports off before I post cure it, and I clean it up before I post cure it, because I just think the resin's softer and easier to do that with.
Yeah. Perfect. So and then yeah.
But yeah, the slicing software, it tells you, like, I actually have a question about that. Go back to where you see the red spots in there. So that tells you then it's got cups or whatever it says, where something might
unsupported.
happen.
Yeah. So this is before the support placements were put in place. So that's what's really good too, is that, especially if you are not sure of, what needs supporting or anything like that, it'll tell you, it'll highlight those spots and say, hey, you need supports here for this to be a successful print. And oftentimes you can do like the auto-generated supports. And if you need to, you can go in and do,
Which is what I do. Yeah, I'll do the auto-generated supports, but it also shows the thing that there's cupping or whatever. It says they can blow out, which is a little, I thought, I positioned this piece like a certain way, and then I put it in PreForm, and then it tells me that I'm going to have a cup there. So I'll reposition it and change it around and try it again and try different supports, and eventually says, okay, it's good. Gives you a thumbs up, So
yeah, you want all those green lights, all those green thumbs ups.
Yeah. Will it print if it does have a thumbs down? Will you still? Can you still make the machine do it? I didn't try.
If I'm not mistaken, and maybe some of my colleagues in the chat too would be able to speak to this, but I'm pretty sure you can't send it to the printer. You can send it to the, but it's just maybe not recommended exactly to, it's giving you the error or the warning before sending it to the printer. Exactly. But you can still do it.
That's something else. That's something I think an improvement they can make in the machine too. Is like every other printer I've used has like a USB port where you can plug in a little flash drive with your model on it. This has a Wi-Fi or an Ethernet connection, and my computer where I'm working, which is in the room I'm in now, and the printer's in a whole other room. Sometimes I was having trouble through the Wi-Fi, because my Wi-Fi goes on and off, of it not getting the whole print. So, I tried to send it to it, and my models are pretty dense, millions of polys, and it takes a while, and then the printer goes idle. And I wish I could just put a flash drive in. So Formlabs guys, you should do that.
There you go. Put it on the development map.
Because I'll be much happier.
Well, yeah. I want to transition to, we were talking about a lot of the prints that you've run, and one of the big parts of printing, obviously, is the material, because printer does, the actual technology, but the different types of materials that you use is a huge, part of that. And with Formlabs, they have a giant, portfolio of materials that they've created. I think that's one of my favorite things. I worked on the material team here at Source Graphics, and it was one of my favorite things to talk to customers about, is just the different material and things that you could do with this, that, or the other. And I see James too in the chat. He was talking about the Rigid 10K, which is also a really good material. But you use both the gray V4 resin, which is the one that you started with, and you showed the little monkey, and then the model V3. So can you talk to me a little bit about printing with the gray resin first?
Yeah. Well, what I like about the gray resin is it shows the sculpture well. I mean, it's opaque enough that you can see the surface detail very clearly. And also, I thought it would be great for making molds. Though, like I said, I ended up not printing a mold with it. But I like it for showing off the sculpture and texture. But if you want to paint something flesh, Caucasian flesh-like, it's kind of hard starting with the dark gray resin like that. So I asked you, is there something, is there another resin that's translucent, or maybe that I can color, or it comes as a basic kind of flesh color, and you mentioned the model resin, the V3 and V4, I guess it is. So yeah, here I see the slide. So this is the one in the rondo head that's not painted, you can see, and then the painted version of it. So, and I have the little head here too, actually. Let me take it off this thing. So yeah, this is the little guy. It's a little washed out in lighting here, but I made it so I could get the back of his head off, and I did some painting even on the inside.
Oh, wow.
It was like light was showing through it. And because it was thin enough, I actually did some color underneath, and I printed his little eyeballs as well. I don't know, and it's got just a clear urethane over the top. But yeah, when I got this resin, I was really excited, because it's a good starting point for any Caucasian flesh type thing. I think it'd be great. Well, the goat man, which I'll show later too, is an example of that. And I think for making fake heads, or for dolls even, I think doll makers would have a blast with this printer, with this resin, because you could print the hands. I was using it to make a puppet. I'm going to make a little rondo puppet. I don't know if you guys follow me on Instagram, that I have that Phantom of the Opera puppet I did. I was going to do a rondo version too, so, but, to print hands and a head out of a material that's a good color to begin with is a really good head start.
It's a really good base. Yeah, I know. And that was really exciting, when we first had that conversation about you switching over to the Model V3, because it was relatively new. It should maybe come out maybe a month or two before. And it was, a very fast printing resin. And I think that was a big, one of the big characteristics of it that I really liked. And, when pairing it with a 3L is one of the things that you really want. With it being obviously a big printer, with SLA, sometimes it's going to obviously take a lot longer. But with the V3 resin, it does, at least in my testing as well, it's noticeably shorter of a printing time. I think I had run a couple prints myself that were maybe 5-hour differences or 6-hour differences, which is pretty substantial when you're looking at a print. So, and the fact that it gets such great detail as well is, I think, also a benefit of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I like the speed of the resin printers, I must say, because I started out with a filament printer, and to print a human-sized head was like more than a week usually, And as you know, prints
Yep.
don't always work, and if you've got, I printed a mold. I did a full-scale rondo silicone mask, like from the same model of the head that we showed earlier, and printed that mold in my filament printer, and just the face part took 11 days to print. And wow, exactly. And fortunately, I was doing other things at the same time, but I would always run and check the printer, because if something goes wrong after 10 days, you just wasted 10 days, So, for example, when I printed the goat man, he was, I think, maybe 2 days printing, which I was really excited about. It's much better than 11 days.
Right. Yeah, that's a substantial difference. Yeah, in comparison. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I do want to I know we're about the 30-minute mark here, so I want to talk about specifically maybe the goat man behind you, but just finishing techniques, just because that's a really important part of 3D printing as well. But you had talked about standing down, or how you got rid of the line, I guess, with some of these big parts. So would you mind talking a little bit about how you were able to really manage that seam line once it was actually processed, and what you did?
Yes. Let me get this guy off of here. Hang on, I forgot how to put him on. Hang on. Okay, I put him on really well. That's how I put him on. So I did this guy, this was from American Werewolf. I scanned from a master I had from the American Werewolf change ad, which basically has two different sides. This side is the more human side in pain. This side is the more werewolf side. And this is one of the first things that I printed big with the V3 resin. And the seam on this was, I think it kind of came across here somewhere like that, and I've found it seems when it's going through an area like this, it's hardly noticeable. On the flatter areas, it was somewhere up here. I think I had a little bit of a step, but I basically, because like I said, I use it before it's post cured. I'll remove the supports. I'll use a file, usually a little file. Just file the main, if there's a big step. I have one of those little sanding pad, like 3M makes these little, sanding pad things, which I can sand with. I've got a little dental, rotary tool that was something that left over from the shop, which is a nice thing to kind of get in there and grind off little spots with, or even I'll use it to kind of retexture sometimes too. You can kind of make little pores again, and go back with a little sanding. And but to clean up the seam, this goat man, the back of his head, which you can't really see, the seam, this guy goes right down the middle. I didn't even clean it up on the back. It's how it came out of the printer. On his face, there was a pretty good step on the nose, and then virtually nothing here. And I think a lot of it was the position that I had him in the printer, which let me pull him off. See if you can see.
Oh yeah.
So you can see the seam a little bit there now, yeah, but hardly noticeable. Again, this is light raking across it. You don't see the seam on the nose at all. It came right down the middle of the nose, like that. But so I printed this. This was the last thing I printed, and I wanted to take advantage of the size of this printer. So I printed him in one piece. From the neck to the top of the head, but I had the horns separate and I had the ears separate because they would have cropped off in the print thing. So what I did then I printed the head, and the eyes were separate too. The eyes were like this, and then I printed an outer shell, and this is just a vacuum form over that printed 3D printer piece to give it a gloss and a kind of a lensing effect. But then I glued the pieces on with super glue, and then I used some more of the resin in like a little eyedropper and dropped it on wherever the seam was. And I have a little UV light I put on it, and then I could go in and sand or grind if necessary. Some points I didn't need to. I could just put the resin in, and it's filled into space beautifully, so yeah, that's basically how I clean it up. And as far as painting it goes, again, because it had a good base color, and I wanted this guy to be pale. I mean, you can see he's a lot more pale than this guy, you know. So I mean, I painted with oil paint, actually alkyd paints, which is a fast drying oil, and very thin down with terpenoid, and do most of it with a brush, some with the airbrush. And the problem with the oil is it takes a while for it to dry, so you can't do too many colors without it mixing up together, which sometimes you do want, you know. So, but I would, you know, do some painting, let it dry overnight, come back, paint in some more stuff, and go on from there.
I mean, yeah, so, I mean, even though you had to do multiple, for, you know, rounds, I would say, you know, looking at that model, that was when I saw the finished product of that one, I was really blown away. I couldn't believe that had been printed, you know, and I showed some people too. They were like, "Whoa, that's incredible."
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what's cool about it. I mean, that's the main reason. Like I said, I wanted to get it to try to make some molds to do silicone things out of. But then when I saw this resin, I thought, you know, it looks like a silicone casting already. You know, so yeah, I'm looking forward to, you know, printing more full size heads, you know, different characters and things, and having fun with it. So I'll put them back on the sticker.
I'm very excited to see more of that too. Me personally, you know, if I am completely honest. So I think that takes me really to my my last question before we get into, you know, the Q&A that we have here in the chat, would be, you know, where do you think 3D printing, or, you know, maybe more specifically the Formlabs, the SLA printer, like the Form 3L that you've been using, fit in, you know, in movie making? You know, where do you see it being a good fit, and, you know, how can take advantage of it?
Yeah, well, I know it's being used now. I mean, the people that, you know, at Stan Winston's studio and now Legacy, they've done a lot of printing, and you know, the Iron Man suit and all that stuff is printed, or they print molds and they print stuff, and that's great. I mean, what's happening a lot now, especially because of COVID, you know, when we're doing an effects makeup, the first step was always taking a life mask. You make a mold of a person's face and duplicate it in plaster. And with COVID, that was something people weren't going for. So I know, like, for example, Louis at SNL, you know, got a scanner, and they're scanning the people and printing the life masks. And I think that's actually, you know, better for everybody. I mean, I never like taking a life mask of somebody because they're nervous about it, you know, and it makes you a little nervous, you know, and it can be a scary process for somebody compared to a scan, you know. What I also like is the fact that you can scale things in 3D prints, you know. I mean, so for example, I think something to be really helpful, you know, like when you make a latex mask, you have a life cast of your head, you sculpt on it, you make the mold, you put the latex in. Latex shrinks considerably. So if you don't take that into account when you're sculpting the head, sometimes it won't fit, or if it's really tight and stretches out on some of your stuff. So why not print it? You know, figure out what percentage it shrinks. You know, say it shrinks 12%. You just print the head 12% larger. You can sculpt on it, and you got it. You know, it's just great. Like, for example, I wish we had this when we were doing Maleficent. You know, to do the horns. We had these removable horns with magnets in it, you know, that we cast out of some lightweight urethane, but it took us a lot of experimenting, a lot of trying, a lot of stuff where with a printer, it would have been so much easier to print the horns, print the connection pieces, you know, print a bazillion spares, you know, and I mean, I think the uses are endless, you know, especially if you're doing something that's mechanical looking, modeling a mechanical thing on the computer is so much easier than sculpting it straight lines and hard edges and stuff, and printing it would be, you know, a really great solution, you know. So I was hoping to, like I said, I originally was thinking I was going to do a full scale mold of this guy and actually print a mechanism for it and print the teeth and do a change-o head, mechanical change-o head with printed parts. But I changed gears for a number of reasons, you know. But I still want to get to that at some point.
Well, that's actually was going to be my next question. So, what's your next project that you're looking to do on the on the 3L?
Yeah, I don't know yet. I kind of need to finish the ones I've got here. That's what's happened to me a lot lately is I'll get something like that little rondo head. It's like 90% there, and it's kind of I can see how it's going to look. So it's like, okay, now I'm kind of bored with this. I'll move on to something else. And I don't like to be the guy that doesn't finish stuff. But I'm kind of turning into that.
I can relate. Like, I can relate right there with you.
Yeah. Yeah, just because I want to try something new. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to print next, but I'm sure it'll be something out of that model resin and it'll be life size. So.
Well, cool. Well, I am very excited. And I think I can speak for everybody, on the call who is going to be anxiously awaiting your next Instagram post with the next project is on that one. Cool. Well, so with that,
well, soon I'm going to have to start on Halloween. I mean, Halloween's a big deal in my family, and last year, where I live is like Halloween town. I mean, people go crazy on Halloween and decorate and do all this crazy stuff, and we'll kind of put on a show, but we haven't for the last couple of years done it. And I don't even know if we can do it this year yet, but the problem is I usually start in August at the latest to prepare for Halloween because I'm basically a one-man crew, and I've got four people to make up and make costumes for and props and stuff and sets and everything. So it's intense work. So I'm thinking I might even start earlier this year, hoping that we can maybe do Halloween this year, but I'm kind of worried about the whole COVID situation getting worse again too. So.
Well, fingers crossed for that, because that would be a fun project, I'm sure. Well, with that, unless there's anything else that maybe you wanted to say, Rick, anything outside of the questions that I've asked, I'm going to jump right into Q&A, but I thought I'd give you the floor just in case.
Let's
All right, let's go for it.
Take a swig of this.
Okay, so let me go ahead and go through this. I've marked a few here, and I'm just going to really quickly scroll through just to make sure that I didn't miss any. I see the chat was really going, to town, so a lot of people have already answered some of these, but let's go ahead and answer some of this here. So at the very top, so what's the learning, Todd asked, what is the learning curve like for the L compared to the smaller Formlabs printers? What slicers can be used with it beyond the Formlabs slicer? I think I'll let you, I think you maybe answered this already, Rick, but the learning curve for the 3L, what was that like?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what it's like compared to the other ones because I haven't used another one. The only Formlab I've used is the 3L, and it was pretty straightforward. I mean, there was nothing. I mean, it walks you through the steps more or less, and I mean, I got the printer and like in a few minutes later, I started printing this thing. I mean, it was. And I don't know if you can use another slicer.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll answer that one. No. So it does have to be the Formlabs, the PreForm slicer, which is really easy. I think I've used other types of slicers as well in some resin printers, and every time I do use one of those, I always wish I was using PreForm just because it's so easy and very user intuitive, I would say, to use. Speaking on the moving from a small Formlabs or like from a Form 3 or Form 2 to a Form 3L, I would say that the learning curve, there's not much of it. The biggest thing that you have to think about is what we've already talked about, which is the seam, keeping that into account if you're printing something that you don't want to be affected by that. But really, that's kind of it. You use the same software, so it's just it's the same thing, just bigger, basically. Yeah. All right. Another question here. So Christian asked if we had a model of the build volume of the 3L for a sense of the scale. So I would say the Goatman is a really good example of the build size, because you use the full build size on that one, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
I can.
Yeah. So yeah, that's about as big as it could get.
Grab the build platform actually out just to get a sense. I would say I have a normal size head, But that is what the build looks like, and you can pretty much fit anything on that. Here's a piece that we printed on this printer, just like this, and it fit just like that, pretty much on the printer. So.
Yeah, well, that was the thing with the goat man. I wanted to take advantage of the fact that you can print something large and run it to print it as large as I could, basically. So that's why I tried that one. And originally I'd cut it up. I was going to make it even larger. I'd cut the head into a couple different sections, and I was going to print it and assemble it into more pieces. And then I just thought, let's just try to make as big a one piece thing as I could do.
Yeah, absolutely. Push it.
And I was, yeah.
All right. Hope that answers the question, Christian. Okay, how wide is the seam line that's, this is from Michael, how wide is the seam line that's being discussed? Is it an artifact of calibration or some other user tunable aspect of setup? So I can talk about, I guess, why it happens, which I think there were a couple of other questions about. So with the 3L, it uses two lasers that are working at the same time. And so the seam line is essentially where those two lasers meet. And so they don't cross path at all. And so when you have the two lasers working in conjunction with one another, you're going to have that little lane, basically, like I said, where they don't intersect. So that is why the seam line comes up. But in terms of wide it is, I wouldn't say it's that long. I don't know the exact measurement of it specifically, but it's not very big.
It's not very wide at all. It's well, again, I don't really know millimeters, but I say it's probably not more than a millimeter wide, yeah, if that. But the bigger issue for me was the fact that there was a bit of a step in the nose on that. And I think a lot of it was, get him off again. I had him, if I remember correctly, he was positioned kind of like this in the printer. And like I said, the seam that's here was good and the seam that's here is good, but on the nose here, it had more of a step. So that may, I mean, I don't really know. I'm assuming that's just because it was in this position. If I printed it in a different position, I'm assuming I'd get a different result, right? You know, but.
Okay. See here. Gonna keep on looking through this. Give me just a sec. Okay. Another question that we have is from Christian as well. Is the slicer breaking up the model over 4 builds? For one model, Christian, if I understand the question correctly, you're wondering if the slicer breaks it up? And the answer to that is no. It doesn't break it up necessarily apart from doing the slicing, but it's just a model.
What it also doesn't do is doesn't hollow it, which would be a nice thing. I know that whatever that Cheeto box thing is, well, it can hollow a model as well, slices it, and it does the holes as well. So you have to do that, and I mean, I use ZBrush to hollow it and to remove parts and things like that. So. Which again, with my bad measuring and stuff, when I printed the Nazi demon, I don't know if you can see, but it's pretty thin. It's not a very thick piece. I'm a little worried about the stability of it. When I printed this monkey, it was real thick, and this guy is a pretty good thickness, so it's I'll do things by eye, but you're looking on your computer screen, and then when you look at it on the printer, I'm like, oh yeah, well that's kind of thick, or it's not thick enough.
Yeah.
So, I need to learn to measure. That's just it, It's just...
Measurements, yeah. That's I know. That's what I try to eyeball something when I'm put up on the wall or something, not measuring. I should do that more often. All right. Here's a question from Ray. Is it difficult to paint in resin, Steeler and acrylic? So I'm guessing it's a question more about the post kind of processing. So is it difficult to paint the resin print? Maybe?
Well, I mean, I didn't find it difficult. With the oil paint, with the base color on that, I did cast originally a rondo in the gray resin, which I primed with a primer, which was also a gray primer, and then I painted it with acrylic, and it painted fine like anything else. any other plastic thing that you paint with a primer. So, I mean, I don't find it any more difficult. In fact, I mean, with the model resin, it's easier because you have a starting, a good base color to start with. Which is funny because I don't know how you say this is made for dental work, right? Yeah, I don't know how they use it, but it's interesting because when it first comes out the printer, it's a slightly different color. And then when it post cures, it changes to a little redder color. It's more yellow when it comes out initially.
They typically use it for printing, models, so dental models. So if you think about, producing aligners, things like that, they'll print out the molds or the model of people's teeth, and then use that to form aligners and different things like that, which is, you really do want high accuracy, which is a very accurate resin in terms of resolution, and is also very good for printing models. Well, that's actually why it used to be called dental model specifically, but now it's just called model resin specifically for that reason, just because there's so many other actual use cases for it.
I think they should call it Goatman resin.
Hey, pitch it to them. See if it'll be Rick's Goatman resin. Here's a question from Elizabeth. Hey, Rick, which films in your career do you believe would have benefited from the use of 3D printing?
Oh, probably all of them. I mean, I would think more than anything, like the Men in Black films and things like that. I mean, what's great about the 3D printing as well, and about printing molds, or just working digitally. I mean, I came from a background of sculpting, traditionally with clay and modeling and making molds. And, when you do a hand, you sculpt the right hand and you sculpt the left hand, and every finger and everything, it's hard to work around the areas and stuff. Working digitally, you can just isolate a finger so you can just work on that side really easily. You could model a right hand and flop it and you have a left hand. I mean, that kind of stuff I think would be really valuable in the film industry, where it's like, okay, you can model it, even if you model it traditionally with clay, you could scan it and then flop it to do the left, like I said, mechanical parts, clear parts, in Men in Black 3, we did this clear alien with has different layers of clear bits that I haven't used your clear resin yet, but we probably could have printed that stuff, it's endless. I think, I wish, and people have said this to me, don't you wish you had this technology when you were working in the films? I do. The only thing that I think is a little scary is, and this is scary with anything that you're doing, is something fails. I mean, if you're doing a print, you're counting on if, for example, when I was using my filament printer and it was 11 days, if you schedule 11 days for that to print and then it doesn't work, you're like 11 days behind, and so that's a little scary, which is good with the resin. It's faster, I'm sure I could have used it in every one of the films I've done, print teeth, print ears, same thing. I love working digitally. I love working traditionally as well, but the speed in working digitally makes it fun. You can sculpt both sides at the same time. I mean, the first things I ever did when I was doing ZBrush, people would remark about the fact that it was asymmetrical, and it was intentionally asymmetrical because most everybody is asymmetrical and real things are asymmetrical. And so many people at that time, because you can work symmetrically, everything was perfectly symmetrical, which I think makes it look artificial. I mean, if you look, one of my eyes is bigger than the other. One side of my face is bigger than the other. Most everybody's like that, but you can, for blocking it out and getting your shapes there, working symmetrically is great, and it's fun, and it's fast. So
very cool. All right, let me see if I can get a couple more here.
I see somebody asked if I ever used any of the flexible resins. I haven't used any flexible resins yet, but would like to try. Yeah.
Let's see. Here's a question from Gary. Is resin stronger than PLA for mechanical parts? Do you want to take that? I can answer it if you'd like. I don't know. Okay, so it's in certain cases it really depends on the material. So, for example, there are specific types of resins from Formlabs, like, for example, a Tough 2000 material resin, which is formulated to be very tough and be able to take a beating. So in some cases, I would say yes. In others, for like, a gray, if it has been cured, you wouldn't want to necessarily drop it on the floor. It would be a little brittle, and you wouldn't want it to shatter or anything like that. So that is I would say, one of the things to keep in mind. In my experience, can sometimes take a little bit.
I almost dropped a goat man yesterday. It's like I got him all pretty much finished, and I was setting him up on this thing and made a misstep and almost dropped him. And I thought, oh, I wonder what would have happened. I knew it wasn't going to be good. I don't want to find out.
Exactly.
I've broken PLA things before. Yeah. So.
All right. Here is another one from Joe. When scanning ahead instead of creating a life cast, how is a proper scale of the actor managed in the file?
Well, scanner tells you what the size of the scan is. At least the scanner I have does. And I make I record it. It tells you X, Y, and Z. They're like basically a bounding box around the thing. And I just make sure that I write down what it says it is. And when I put it in ZBrush, I set the scale at that. So.
And let's see, we will do just a couple more because I know we are running out of time. Let's see. Just rolling through here. Here is one question. You may have already answered this one, actually, Rick, but I'll put it up again just in case folks didn't hear it. But do you have to create drain holes in hollow parts to prevent suction like in other resin printers? Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You definitely had to do this, and I had to, after I put some of these things in the slicer, what's it called? PreForm. After I put these in, it told me that I might have a problem and I should probably ventilate, put a hole there, so then I had to take it back into ZBrush, put a hole in it, bring it back in and do it. Yeah.
So it is, important to do that. Otherwise you will get either the cupping or, just really even a very thick part, because then it'll be completely solid all the way through. And you use a lot of material, I think, also is the other thing too, when you try to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a question from Ron. People forget that you also need the curing system or a curing system. Can you talk about the importance of that? So you use the good old-fashioned curing system, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. The sun, yeah. Yeah, because you don't have a curing system for the big one yet. So, or you didn't have one when I got that. So I take it outside, put it in the sun. I don't know how long you're supposed to cure it for. Is there a maximum? A minimum time?
Yeah. So there are actually, for each of the resins, there is a particularly in using like the Form Cure, and yeah, to your point, there is now it has come out, the Form Cure L, which is the large version meant for the Form 3L. Will have both the temperature that you want to heat it at, if it needs a heated temperature or a heated cure, as well as the time. So it really depends on the resin, and also only what you want to do with it. If you're just wanting to do a model of it, or if you want to activate some of the mechanical properties, some of those things are dependent on the heat and also the time that it is cured. But it is an important aspect, of SLA printing in particular. That's a big difference between, I would say, that and the filament printing. Okay, let me just see. Maybe I'll take two more, if that. Maybe one. This is kind of a good one, I think. Somebody asked about just like the general takeaway. I think this was Chase who had asked, what should our general take be? At what point should we make a jump to one of your printers, and do you offer print services? But I think just generally takeaway, Rick, what would you say takeaway in terms of wanting to communicate really what 3D printing can do, and if somebody is interested in
it? Well, you're not taking this away. This is mine. You can't take it. You can't take any of this stuff. I make stuff for myself. I'm an only child. Yeah. No, I think the takeaway is that, an ever-evolving technology, and it's just getting better all the time. I mean, the problem I always had, like I said, I was waiting for this printer because I wanted something larger, and you know that there's going to be a better one in a year or two, you know. And I'm just excited by what that's going to be. You know that they're going to get bigger, they're going to be faster, and I mean, I think what you can take away is it's another way to make things. I mean, it's another trick in your bag of tricks if you're a maker. You know, I mean, if you're a creative person, it's fun to just try and play with something new and then discover how you might use it. I mean, that was, my intention with the 3D printer, the very first one I bought. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it, but I knew it was a technology that could be fun to play with. And I mean, more than anything, I was thinking I was going to print little palettes to put makeup in, and didn't think I would be able to print something like the Popeye that I got out of that filament printer machine. But I mean, mind you, that was a lot of cleaning up, and there was a lot of issues with this printer not printing a row of stuff. And the filament printers, the stuff would jam, and the machine would go around, it wouldn't print, and then it would start printing, and all of a sudden that part would fall off if you didn't stop and save it. So there was a lot of babysitting that Popeye for a long time, and a lot of cleanup. But it was still cool that I could do that. So I just found it exciting.
I think so, and that's such a good takeaway. It's just, it's another tool in the toolbox, right? That if you're a creator, if you're somebody that is interested in this, like, it's good to bring this in and learn how to use it, because it's like you said, it's just going to keep getting better, and it's probably going to keep getting adopted, right? And because people know more of what it can do, and will keep pushing it. And I think by people continually experimenting with it, they will continue to find new ways, and that's just going to expand it even more. So if you're interested in it, that's all you really need, I would say. If you're interested, that's the time, to into it and to get it. If you're interested in obviously learning more about that, or print services, we do through our sister company have some print services that we could provide too. So either way, if you're interested in that, you can always come reach out to us, and we'll definitely help you. Perfect. We are 2 minutes over, so I thank you so much, everybody, jumping on, and of course, Rick, thank you so much for your time and for jumping on the call with us. This was one of my favorite conversations that I've had. But if you want to continue the conversation, definitely keep in touch with us. You can follow our Instagram page. We are at @source_graphics. Rick, many of you already know, is at the Rick Baker. So you can follow both of us on Instagram. We'll be posting some more pictures, and we always try to put educational content on there too, if you're interested in that. And then the next slide over, you can always reach out to us too if you want to request a quotation, see if it's right for you. One of our 3D Solutions representatives will be able to help you, talk you through it, really figure out what your needs are, and we'll provide the right solution for you on. So you can scan that little code or visit our website. But again, Rick, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
It was my pleasure, and I'm sorry I couldn't answer everybody's questions individually. I see a lot of things popping up, and I'm going, but running out of time. So, there you go. So, anyways, thank you for letting me play with this printer. I've had a lot of fun with it, and enjoyed making this stuff, and it's just a cool toy.
Awesome. Well, we will talk soon, and look forward to seeing your next project. So again, thanks a lot. We will talk to everybody very soon. Take care.